Shh.
So the basic idea of WALL-E is that all the humans left the Earth and forgot to turn the last robot off.
Yep.
A heartbreaking
Yes.
notion. Can you tell me how this story developed over time?
That exact sentence. That's honestly, it just fell out of our mouths at lunch exactly the way you just described it. Is what if everybody left Earth and somebody forgot to turn the last robot off? And that's how I immediately reacted. To be honest, we were in the middle or just on the back end of spending 2.5 years banging our heads against the wall trying to make Woody an interesting character and an empathetical character, even though he did all these things that weren't likable. And it was a real lesson. And to have a sentence with a character without a name that I didn't even know anything about and I already cared about them in that quickly, I was like, there is something there that is worth mining. But very quickly after that, we said, you know what would be charming is if it was like watching R2-D2 or Luxo Jr. It was a machine that spoke the way it was built. And you had to interpret it for a whole movie. And we were completely inspired as film goers to see a movie like that. But we were very practical and said, you know, nobody will ever give us money or the chance to make a movie like that. So it just sort of went to the wayside. And I think it just took 6-7 years of much more experience of movie making, the technology to get better, us to become better filmmakers, for me to become a better writer, to just really suddenly kind of understand what to do with something like that. And frankly, for Nemo to be so huge. I mean, because it was so huge, it gave me sort of the confidence and courage to just go, no, I want to try something like this, which I don't think many people would have had the desire even then to do.
You talked earlier about how you felt, the emotional attachment that you felt for this character. How real do these characters become to you over the years?
Well, they have to become almost like a relative that you're describing but don't have in front of you, to others too. Because you're simulating a real person, and people are very complex. They're like a multifaceted diamond, and it's really hard to get almost fake enough facets that it implies that they're as complex as people that you really meet and spend your entire life still trying to understand. And so yeah, you have to really, really fall in love with them, or not necessarily love them, but empathize with them. You almost be able to be in their skin and think like them, and that just takes time. I've learned a lot that plotting is easy. Plotting you can do very quickly. You could almost do in a day if you change the scenarios and something. But coming up with a character that really resonates takes months to years. There's no quick way around it.
As with many of your characters, within moments of WALL-E starting, there's just immediate suspension of disbelief. Can you talk to me a little bit about going through the process of creating an object that is a robot, but adding this heart and the emotion to it through subtlety of movement?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to separate them because they really are married together, is what it looks like and how it moves. Actually, it's almost like a tripod. It's how it looks, how it moves, and the context. That sentence is this huge foundation for why WALL-E's so charming. People sometimes say, oh, it's so dark in the beginning, why'd you make it so dark? I said, you would not be charmed by WALL-E or like WALL-E if it wasn't so dark at the beginning. He's this little light in the middle of all this darkness, and that's why you like him. And that has a lot to do with a huge kickstart with why you like him. Then a lot has to do with just the integrity of the design. And I knew that Luxo Jr., John, had really captured it. It's not any design. You can't make, there's some designs that just you almost can't stop yourself from wanting to throw a life on that inanimate object if it's designed just right. And he stumbled across an appliance in real life that did that already. So the trick for us was making up an appliance that did that to you. And that took almost a year and a half to just get them just right. Make them a turtle, make them a box, and then the piece de resistance was sort of the binoculars that I sort of fell across at a baseball game and missed a whole inning because I turned them around and started realizing there's an entire soul and character there without having to change a thing. And the one area that I knew I had confidence in was the animators. Those guys would be able to, make movement and convey anything they want to. If anything, they had to learn how to be subtle. For him, it was just the slightest tilt. He was like a dog. Like the slightest tilt of a head could mean all this, communicate all this emotion and convey so much. So it was really playing it down, and it was fun. It was fun to play in this pool of subtlety.
I read about the long discussions that took place about whether WALL-E should have elbows.
Yes.
How involved are you in every element?
Way more involved than I'd like to be. I get tired just remembering all that. it's meeting after meeting, day after day for years, and learning how much is worth being caught up in the minutia versus what's worth just making a quick decision and moving on. And I'm surrounded by incredibly talented, incredibly smart, incredibly opinionated people, and that's what you want to get to the best. And my job a lot of the times is just to mediate it. I don't have to necessarily always be the source of the idea. But you know, what's great is when you have people that care that much. I mean, I had people that just really, like, they saw this as their chance to make the robot they've always wanted to see, or make the sci-fi movie they've always wanted to see. And so a lot of times I had to just calm people down. You know, it's just I don't know. There's a voodoo to it. It's almost like making movies by Braille. Sometimes you're just putting things together and just feeling it out, almost like improv, and you just have to call it out when you've caught something. You can't even explain why he's so charming or why that suddenly worked, but just try to capture it in like lightning in a bottle.
There's a beautiful simplicity to the story, and there's quite a nostalgia. I mean, the greatest act of emotional intimacy is hand-holding, and the "Hello, Dolly" refrain throughout. You've juxtaposed that beautifully with this futuristic setting.
Yeah.
Was that an intentional contrast?
Yeah, sometimes I think it's just because I'm not that smart, and I need to bring it down to these simple, almost grade school level ways of understanding things or processing things to get it. But I want to turn that into an asset. Like, I think ultimately, no matter how complex an issue is or how intricate an idea is, it should ultimately be communicated in a very gettable way. It takes a lot of effort to make something seem effortless, and so whether it's meant as a compliment or not, I'll take it as a compliment when somebody says the movie's simple, because I'm always trying to work it down to its barest essentials, you know, from these complex groups of ideas and stuff like that. And I loved, even if it wasn't a movie with very little dialogue, you just love as a storyteller and as a filmmaker to find things like hand-holding that can convey so much with so little.
I was particularly gripped by the artwork during the closing credits. What was your motivation there?
Well, to be honest, we didn't have that idea for a long time. What happened is we had a preview screening about a year and a half ago. We only had like one for the movie, and when it was over, half the audience felt that everything was going to be rosy and good for humanity, and the other half thought they were going to die in like 2 days. We said, well, that's not good, because I always thought it was an optimistic ending. So we felt we needed a little bit more of insurance for that other half of the audience that had a little darker or cynical point of view about things. So we said, well, we should show through in some manner that things get better. And somebody in our story crew had the great idea of retelling the history of art, and through it seeing what happens, because that's really what we've done with our history. And that just, the minute it was said, we're like, that's great, we have to do that. And then Jim Capabianca, who did Your Friend the Rat, which is a short on the Ratatouille disc, he just seemed like the perfect candidate to run with something like that. And I really didn't have much to do. I could just sort of stand back and enjoy the process of seeing this. And getting the Peter Gabriel song to have this sort of world music flavor to it just really was sort of the added touch it needed to just sort of keep the integrity we wanted for the whole film.
Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Absolute pleasure to meet you.
Oh, it was a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.